Right, TikTok. Finally back. Just finished my final year at university. So I was doing all my TikToks prior in first year. So it sort of had a bit of time just to focus on what I needed to do at uni. And also I messed up my shoulder last year. So I haven't really been too active in the gym. I mean, I'm still keeping on the weight, but I'm waiting on to see if I need surgery or not. But in the meantime, I thought I would actually break down my process. Well, the general process on what I got taught as a PT. So we'll just dive straight into it. So you've got three categories of training. You've got endurance, hypertrophy and strength, in that order that you train in. Depending on if you're doing sport specific, most people that are doing sport specific mainly focus on endurance and strength. If we're into bodybuilding, we're more into hypertrophy. That's with like high volume, high reps and high weight. But we want to build up a good foundation before we get there. So endurance, it is 12 to 15 reps. You can go higher. Some people like to go higher, but I normally go 12 to 15. If you're just starting out, I'd suggest maybe do 15 reps on the resistance machines, then build it up to free weights, and then go down to 12. So we got 2 to 3 sets, and around rest time about 30 seconds to a minute rest. You want to record all these variables because it's like a scientist. A scientist doesn't just put willy-nilly into a bottle and then just expect it to be like, oh yeah, that works because oh shit, we didn't know how much we put into there, so we didn't. Do you know what I mean? So like, we're scientists, so it's different reactions in our body, and if we're not even thinking about actually how much rest time we're actually having. Also, you've got time under tension, so how long the rep is, and then also your range of motion. You're sort of wasting your time because you might find that 1 week you might have more rest if you're just on your phone, and then the next week you'll have less rest, but you don't know if you're doing better because the fibers would have had time to repair more with the more rest, so that next set might have been better, but you don't know where you're standing. So basically that's why. Hypertrophy 6 to 12 reps. We got about a minute to 2.5 minutes. When I go out of my endurance phase, I'll tend to hit pyramids, and then that's when I start increasing the weight, but I'll increase the rest time. So again, change variables to help counter the change in weight. So hypertrophy here, this is where you're going to be building most of your muscle. We have 3 to 6 sets for hypertrophy, and then we get into strength down here. So this is where you'll be doing, people like to do 1 rep max. I don't always like to do that, so I've put in reps. You've got 2 to 5, because if you go in 1 rep max every time, you're bound to bloody injure yourself. People say, train hard or go home. You will actually go home with the injury if you just keep training hard. Heavy lifts all the time. Your body needs time to recover. So sets are 2 to 5, and we got 2 minutes plus rest. I like to go 2 minutes and then 3 minutes when it's getting really, really heavy. You need this rest time because it's vital, because it's like the heaviest lifts you can do. So here, in what I said in order before, so endurance, hypertrophy, strength. And how you do this in cycles, not steroids, this type of cycle. So here, let's say I'm training someone for the first time when I was a PT, and they had never been in there, obviously, like I said, I'd get them on the resist machines and then free weights later on. Let's say you're at that point in free weights. You want to train for 5 weeks in endurance, which is your 12 to 15 reps. I'd start at 15, work down to 12. Sets 2 to 3. I'd heavily suggest hit 3. Don't always hit 2. But let's say if it's the end of your workout and you just you're doing isolation or you don't have time, just get 2 in. Then rest time. I would normally get someone to do a minute if they'd never really gone into gym, and then bring it down, but I normally start on 30 seconds. If, let's say, you wanted to increase your set without actually increasing the weight as a variable, just decrease the rest. So 1 week you're doing 45 seconds rest, or like a minute, and then the next week you might bring it down by 45 to 45 seconds or 30 seconds, just to change a variable to make that exercise harder. All right, so we've got 5 weeks, then 3 weeks in hypertrophy. Again, I'm not going to cover the sets and that, you already know them. and then maybe 1 or 2 weeks in strength, but very light strength, nothing taxing. So we've just done one whole cycle. Now we're gonna go back down to endurance, because with taxing your body, you can't keep doing it because you're gonna plateau. See, we were trained to go in cycles, so go back down to endurance, where your body's actually gonna have time to rest, and which will be in that 2 weeks. So it won't be taxing in those 2 weeks. So you can get that rest, and then after you've done a whole load of cycles, we were trained to have a whole week's rest, and you actually build the most muscle in that week. So now that hypertrophy we had, the cycle before was 3 weeks, now it's 6 to 7 weeks. So this is when we're actually building most of our muscle in our hypertrophy phase. Again, I like to go in pyramids just to ease into that phase. You'll notice on some of my videos, before I get into that phase, I might do a week or two eccentric, concentric. So that's going slow on movements. The reason for this is it creates stability in your joints. So have you ever found when you do a bench press, you're weakest at the bottom or the top? Top is because your triceps giving way, but the bottom especially. So if you do it slower and get a nice stretch, range of motion, which is key, and then go up and get a nice contraction, which helps your mind muscle connection, you'll help those surrounding ligaments and your antagonist, which is your opposite muscle, to stabilize. So you'll be able to lift heavier. So those weeks will be easier. A lot of people go to the gym and just lift heavy straight away, and it's hard to get into it, and they quit. That's the reason why, because they haven't built a good foundation for their muscles to grow up. Right, so we've had 1 or 2 weeks in strength. Now we can take strength a bit more serious this time. So we've got 3 weeks in here. With strength, I don't tend to hit it too much, because I've sort of had times where I stopped going to gym, and I found that I might hit strength for like 1 or 2 weeks. But if I was training someone being a PT, I'd definitely do 3 weeks. Then our last cycle, we got 1 week in endurance. You don't even have to do that, but I'd suggest doing it. Reserve a lot of energy. You'll feel a lot more energized. Like I had one mate, he always hit hypertrophy of strength throughout my first year. Second year I seen him, he said he had a hernia. So he was squatting, popped out a hernia, and then now for the rest of his life he's got to worry whether he could potentially pop out again if he goes too heavy with the weights, or just in general when he does ab workouts. So you don't want to get into a position when you're injured, like I am. I've got a shoulder injury, but I did it when I was younger, and it's just reoccurred last year. So okay, into hypertrophy this time. If this cycle, as you notice, we're sort of shifting the bars to get more increasing for each cycle. So that's getting minimized, that's getting more, and then maybe it doesn't get as much attention here, and then you hit strength. This is where, in between here, is the goal post for building muscle, because you'll be hitting failure towards your pyramid sets, easing out into strength, but then also you'll find that when you hit strength, that's where your compound lifts proper, like bring on the gains. So again, I haven't hit too much in strength, which I will be after I potentially get the shoulder surgery sorted. If I do need it, I get told soon, which I think I do, because it's been messed up for years and just never got sorted. So yeah, starting a YouTube on like my process, because then people can go from TikTok to YouTube just to see how it all is unraveling. And again, my process is nothing new to people, especially PTs. It's how we are trained, but for me, I do a bit slightly different. In my endurance phase, I work on time under tension, which is your eccentric, concentric phases, and even isometric. There was a study that a guy did 2 weeks in each. His strength grew by 40%. So I've always worked off that, and yeah. So I find you do it, eccentric, concentric in your endurance weeks, then your hypertrophy is going to be so much easier, because you'll have that extra stability in your joints. Trust me, give it a go. A lot of people think it doesn't work, but it actually does. It's just that the mindset in the industry makes you think that you have to go heavy straight away. and that's the only way to build muscle, but it's actually not. Your eccentric, so the elongation of the muscles where you tear the most of your fibers. So also in endurance, if you focus that one as well, whilst you build into your hypertrophy phase, you're still doing those elongated phases, you're going to tear a lot more fibers, and you get a lot more out of your workout. But yeah, so for now, I've just finished uni. I'm just finally breaking this down for people. Again, here's another snapshot. So yeah, peace.